Okay, well, we are now live, so let's go live. Or let's start with introductions. Someone go ahead.
Sure,
Because
I can go first. My name is Jen Lampton. I'm joining from Oakland, California. I'm very excited to get back into outreachy things. And that's it for me today. How about Luke?
My name is Luke McCormick. I'm a blah, blah, blah manager in San Ramon, California, about 10 miles from where Jen is. And I'm anxious to spread the word. We've got lots of good news and we need to let the world know about it. Robert.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet from Altadena, California, about 300 miles south of Luke and Jen. And I've been working on backdropcms.org stuff lately. Tim.
Hi, I am Tim Erickson. I am in Deerwood, Minnesota, and I am just busy. So not too much else to say. So once again, I haven't done any preparation for today's meeting. We have an agenda file. I think we should just jump into what folks want to talk about. I think Greg mentioned a couple of things before we started that we could talk a little bit more about. We certainly could talk about Backdrop Live. And Jen, I certainly think our open source day stuff is outreach, and maybe we should update folks on what's been going on with that. So anything else outreachy related? I mean,
Yeah.
let me, I will just say, I don't like to spend a lot of time on the blog posts and social media stuff every week because we all seem too overwhelmed to get it done. But of course, that is a big thing. We are always looking for people to do blog posts. There are plenty of ideas. If you have the time and bandwidth to do a blog post, please let us know, or jump in today and let us know what you could write about. But yeah, go ahead. Greg, you were going to say something.
Yeah, first of all, I am Greg. I'm joining from Greece. I've been away for I've been away for like a month and a half, so I'm trying to catch up with everything that's going on in the community. Today, I would like us to discuss a few things that were brought up in my day work by colleagues that are happening in Drupal land. Namely, there's one summit to train contributors, and I think we can get ideas from that. And the other one is a sort of like an initiative that is happening in Drupal land with regards to onboarding developers faster and allowing them to contribute with sort of like pre-templated setups. We'll discuss this at the end.
First of all, I apologize, Greg. I thought we were through the list.
No worries.
So
Actually, we should apologize. You were writing the agenda, and we should have left you alone until the end.
That's okay.
No worries.
That's okay. Okay. So, boom. I was still distracted, but I think. I'm sorry. Quickly recap. You talked about the summit mentor or the mentor contributor summit, and something else. What was the other thing?
The other thing is called Drupal Pod, and it's like an initiative that aims to provide a one-click tool to set up new contributors so that they can start providing pull requests and fixes for Drupal as soon as possible without having to, jump through hoops to get their locals set up properly.
Okay. Why don't we mention well, both of those things relate at least a little bit to open source day that Jen and I have also been involved in. Greg, you helped the first time. Jen, why don't you talk a little bit about that, just what we've been doing and the status of that, and then these other things sort of will tie into that.
Sure. So Open Source Day is a part of a larger conference called the Grace Hopper Celebration, and that event is specifically designed to help foster women in computer science careers. And part of that event, they have this Open Source Day thing where they try and get a whole bunch of attendees for their event, primarily women, contributing to open source projects. We participated last year and had a pretty good time, and they had an open source day earlier this year too that Tim and I were also helping with, and we had a couple of new contributors who picked up some good first issues and even got them committed. There's another one in the queue that's ready to be committed, so that's really great. They're going to have another open source day along with the event that's coming up in the fall, and this time they sent out an email, I think just this week, saying that they wanted to do a specific accessibility focus for some of their open source projects and asked us if we wanted to be involved in that. And we said yes. And so yesterday, Tim and I spent some time going through the issue queue, making sure we had enough issues labeled in a clear way that we could identify them as accessibility issues for Open Source Day. And we aren't really sure what kind of contributors we're going to get this time, if we're going to get people who can do testing or people who can write code or both. Or people who have accessibility experience who can maybe help us identify issues. We don't know. But we did at least want to make sure that we had a list of our own issues to work through in the event that we just get coders and we want to put them to use solving problems. So that's where we're at right now. I'm also doing a ton of accessibility work in my day job, trying to get 10 different sites very accessible. And we've been doing work with a local group here called the Center for Accessible Technology that has a bunch of people that they employ to use websites with various different levels of need in terms of what their tooling is. They have, some people with Parkinson's and some people who are colorblind and some people who are actually blind and people who just use different kinds of tools. So JAWS is like the most popular tool for people to navigate websites not being able to see, but there are also free open source alternatives that people have been testing. And we're trying to make sure that the websites that I've been working on work across all of those platforms. And so I reached out to that group and said, would you be interested in helping us with this free open source project where we want to get these kind of improvements, not just into the websites that are being built with the software, but into the base software itself. And because the people that I'm working with there are women coders passionate about open source, it seemed like a perfect fit to group them into this open source day with the Grace Hopper celebration. So hopefully we'll find a way to get that kind of all converged at the same time to try and get a whole bunch of people making accessibility better for Backdrop. So it seemed like perfect timing to get everything going together, and I'm hoping that that will all come together nicely. We will see.
What kind of help is required with that whole thing attempt with the idea?
So what Tim and I are doing is we're serving as project mentors. And that means that there will be one day that's called Setup Day that we're both going to spend a couple of hours trying to make sure all of our contributors have a local development environment, or at least an environment where they can write code and file pull requests, even if they're testing them on our sandboxes. And then we're also around during the event. So if anyone has any questions about how to contribute or what a pull request should look like, we're there to help talk through that. I think last time we were in Zoom for almost the whole time, so that not only are you communicating, in Zulip and maybe in the issue queue, but you also have a line of actual verbal communication and smiling faces to talk to these people. And then we're also around to provide feedback to the issues that they're working on. Last year, I did an example, and then Tim did an example, and then we had one of them do an example live. And that was also really beneficial to, share the screen and watch the process of fixing issues. This time, I'm hoping that we'll get some of those same people back, and maybe we can get them to do the example this time, but we'll see. We'll see what we get. So there's a lot of, being there real time, a little issue queue triage, but not a lot of additional work other than just keeping on top of what they're doing and responding if they have questions.
Greg, just to clarify, you were there as a mentor, I think, last fall, right? Yes. I think it was June 10, you and me. They did that was part of the actual conference. This summer they did and you might not have even caught on that because it happened pretty quickly. They did just a sprint day that was not really connected to the conference. And we also participated in that. So Jen and I were mentored. I think we had even fewer participants than we did the first time. Or we had a smaller group, but still, there were a couple of them were very engaged, and we did get, as Jen said, some PRs. Now we're gearing up for, I think the one this fall is again connected to the conference, right, Jen?
Yeah.
It's like during the conference. So
if I recall correctly, they had a Slack channel or something going on where
Yes.
we were tagged as mentors and people could contact us, ping us. It's the same setup or
Yeah.
similar this year?
Yep. I
All right,
think
cool.
it's the same Slack channel. Greg, if you want an invite, if you're not in there already, let me know and we can reach out to them. And
Yeah, I think I removed it. Like I had it in my multi-chat thingy application, but I removed it.
yeah, I often
Well,
end
So
up with
just
a lot of
I did the same, but I also thought that they were going to like close down the Slack after the conference, and then
yes,
they might
that
have
was my
like
impression.
disabled it and reopened it or something. But I don't remember if I had to rejoin it or not this time. But in the end, it was the same setup as this last time. So yeah,
Yeah.
and
If someone can put the link to the Slack channel that they're using, I might already have the credentials for it, and that might be what's required.
well, sure. And again, it's probably pretty inactive right now, right? It was active during that last sprint, which was like a month ago, and now the next one is until October 1st. I think that's the date, isn't it? October 1st.
I think so.
Okay.
The idea, they're not they haven't basically they were looking for certain projects to sort of have an accessibility focus, right? I don't think they all are. And Jen and I think both thought that would be great for Backdrop. I'm curious to see if it increases interest in participating, or if it makes it, if it sort of sets one extra obstacle. I don't know. I would think that there would be a lot of interest in accessibility, so it might actually get us more contributors.
So my understanding is that we've done some prep work to find some accessibility issues in our queue, but I'm guessing that there will be people that are willing to test and spot accessibility issues with software, right? Or is the expectation?
We don't know.
We don't know that.
Okay.
I thought about that, but then I also thought about the fact that maybe they'll have mentors that have some experience in this, but our experience with this in the past has been the participants are really oftentimes very much beginners, and we shouldn't assume that they're going to come with a specific accessibility knowledge. Although I did consider, like, would we be able to use time that day during the sprint to do some accessibility testing? But I don't think we can count on that, and I think we need to be prepared with some issues in advance. But I also saw this as an opportunity for us to just sort of focus on accessibility a little bit. I think this plays into outreach because it's an opportunity for us to reach out to some accessibility folks and say, hey, we're participating in this accessibility sprint, and we'd like to do some testing in advance of the sprint, which is what Jen's already talked about, right? She's already reached out to that group in Oakland. Are they is it a local group, did you say, that you're working with?
Yeah, their office is 8 blocks from here. I mean, their office is closed right now because of the pandemic, but they are really close. I was shocked when I found out I could walk there.
Okay. Nice. Anyways, and I could envision us having even a sprint prior to Open Source Day to where we, I'm envisioning sort of like basically like a triage and or testing day in advance of the Open Source Day, where our focus is not on solving accessibility problems, but identifying them and triaging tickets in the queue. I think Jen and I identified some tickets as accessibility issues. Some of them, I think, Jen, you also said were pretty good first issues, right? Because we also have to keep that in mind. It's not good enough to have a bunch of accessibility issues that are very difficult. We need some that will be relatively easy for beginners.
Yeah, there are a handful that are just adding the right attributes or removing the wrong attributes, which would be great for a first issue because it's pretty straightforward. And I also think, based on the feedback I'm getting from my other websites that we're reviewing, there's a lot of common patterns that I think we could look for in Backdrop, like things around the mobile navigation, things around tabs, there's just like common elements that people access a certain way with different tools. And I think we can say, oh, Backdrop has all these things. Let's make sure we're doing them right. And I even have code samples from this group about their like recommended way to do them, and that works best across most devices or most technologies. And we can just compare that to what we have. So I think even if we can't get an official study of having, their people look at our site. We came up with some other ideas too, like using automated tests, using these examples. I think there's a way we can get new accessibility issues in our queue, even if we can't get humans on backtrack before then. So
that's what I was thinking, that having people test and spot issues is a lower hanging fruit, like raising issues, which is also a good form of contributing, and it's sort of like easily rewarding. That would be a good thing. That's why I proposed it.
Yeah, at Open Source Day, they do specifically ask for like non-documentation issues that can have pull requests filed, because they are trying to get these ladies who are coders into coding open source projects. We have a handful of good first issues that are fixing our doc blocks in various places, but those wouldn't be accepted. And they have sponsors for this event, and based on the number of pull requests that people get in for projects, they sometimes get like gift cards and stuff like that. And so they want to make sure that all of the pull requests are sort of equivalent in terms of what the people are doing. And so having a bunch of documentation ones might skew that if people don't actually need to do the coding to get this done.
I have a local script. It's built for Mac OS. It should run on Linux, but not on Windows, which basically is a command called drop. And if you do drop and then as a parameter the issue that you're working it, like the issue number, what it does automatically is it pulls down code. It sets the backdrop thing as a remote. If there is an existing pull request that it has been forgotten for years, it sort of like merges that in, spins up Lando, sets up backdrop. That's some of the recipes that PW Panda was working on. And then once that's spun up, it uses Rust to do things, developing things like disable CSS and JS aggregation, enable PHP errors and things like that, and install develop module. What would be a good place to sort of like start sharing that, because it allows you to also pick like PHP versions, backdrop versions, things like that.
Can you put it in GitHub? Would it be applicable? Like, would it make sense to put that in backdrop contrib? That seems like the kind of thing that would be super useful. I know it's not a module, but I think that would be where people might go to look for it.
Yeah, it as it is currently, it makes certain assumptions, like it makes the assumption that you're using Docker and Lando and that you're on Mac OS. But if I put it somewhere publicly, someone might contribute to it, so when we can make it OS agnostic or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's not like, and it also makes assumption that it pulls things from my repo, so that we need to figure out ways to customize that for each person. But if it's October 1st, then I think we have enough time. So maybe we can build something that similar to that Drupal pod or Git pod thingy for us situation.
Maybe.
So we already have in contrib, we have tools that are not modules. Should I put it somewhere there?
Yeah, I would make a new project for it.
Yeah, B is not a module.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Right,
yeah, cool. But B is different than this. Let's talk about this for a minute, because there are other examples of this. And so rather than just coming up with a solution for Gregory, Peter shared a GIST a couple of years ago for a Lando.
That's what I'm using.
A Lando file that I have used from time to time. And I think like the last time I mentioned it to Peter, he'd almost forgotten about it. This particular one, I think, I don't know. Maybe not. I mean, I know I had sort of forgotten about it, but it would be like, if you weren't in, this was probably back in Gitter when he announced this, but my point is, like, I don't know that I think there might be a forum post somewhere that references it, that he might have shared it there, but it's like, if you're looking for that kind of thing, where would you find it? And John Weirick just shared on Twitter a little script he wrote to do updates on a backdrop site.
So basically, the script that I have built builds upon that Lando gist that Peter has created. So basically, if it was just the gist, people would need to know how to set the things up on their local and then copy that, and then my script basically does all that for them, and it pulls that customized version of that one. And then it also, on top of it, allows you to select versions of PHP and things like that. And it automates it. But yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I think that would be a good way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a Well, maybe yours is complicated enough that it does warrant a standalone project, where some of these others are simpler. But I guess
Okay.
it does raise that issue. Like if you're sharing if you have those kinds of GIFs or scripts or just init files that would be useful to share, do we have a good way to manage that?
So was Peters already in Backdrop Contrib?
No, not
No.
the GIST file. It was he just had it as a GIST in his GitHub account, and he shared a link to it. And I used it for a while, and then I kind of forgot about it for a while, and then I remembered it was out there, and I just Googled it and found it. But I had to know it was there, right? There was no way I would have stumbled across it, like if I were looking. Yeah, so. And I don't know if you looked at what John Weirick did, if that would be useful to other people, but that was a script for like updating, for running updates on your site.
Yeah. So the thought behind this is that last year we leveraged the demo sites that we have in place, which could and the PR sandboxes, which allowed people from the Grace Hopper thing to either spin environments that like confirm the bugs or whatever, or test pull requests that people have filed before. We have not addressed how they can set up their local to actually work, like edit files, and fix things.
We have spent time on that at both of the open source days, and like this last time we spent too much time on it again. But I think those of us who've mentored it at sprint days know that as long as I've been going to sprint days, like half the day is always spent on helping people get set up.
Yeah, which is
frustrating.
It's part of the mentoring.
We're always looking for ways, right? And so, I'm not sure that a new script is going to solve that for us, because there's always problems in getting the scripts to work, and just getting Lando installed and working, usually works smoothly without a problem, but always on sprint day somebody has problems.
I understand what you're saying. As I said, my script makes certain assumptions as well. There's command line tools like sed or awk that are being used, which are making the assumption that are already installed. But if not, we can adapt the script to install it for the person, like run a command to see if the script is there. If it's not, just install brew and via brew install it or whatever. But yeah, my point is that I have been working on this script and using it for like a couple of years, maybe 3 years now. And there's things that I want to improve, but I've been stagnating because it does whatever I want it to do. If I put it out there, people will start improving it instead of, me just,
Okay, so do we think that, maybe, again, this sounds like it's a little bit more ambitious, and maybe it should just be a project, but I was just asking the question, is there another way as well that we could share these kinds of scripts?
Yeah, the other thing is that Gitpod thing that I was saying, so we can explore the same thing that our Drupal brethren are doing to see if we can create a template that does everything that my script does for people, that sets it up on a environment which is operating system agnostic. So they don't have to, we don't have to say to people like, are you using Windows or Linux or whatever? So I can just do it on the cloud for them. And also it bypasses any issues with hardware requirements. So yeah. But it does, but it will require for them to register with an account to Gitpod, and then request free open source access, which should be easy enough. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I don't have any better solution than what we already talked about. So it sounds like for your one thing, go ahead and set it up. But the Gitpod thing, I think we have to talk about more, or just to test it. We just got to get some people to try it. I mean, again, I think that part of this sets you up with something in the cloud, right?
Yes.
Part of you, but it does let you push code to it, or
yes,
or does it say
push code to our repo? So basically, it would be just from reading through it. I haven't actually. I created an account. I got free. Not sure, open source license, whatever it is, but I haven't actually used it. But from reading the description, it basically allows organizations to have template such template environments So when a new developer is being onboarded, they just provide them with a link. They register with Gitpod, provide them with a link, and then they just pick it and everything's set up for them. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I would think that you need to try it out, and then if you find
Yes,
it
exactly.
works, then we could do like a demo and show it to some of us, and we could see how helpful it is.
I set up an account a few minutes ago, and it seemed pretty smooth. It gives you a URL. It just says, prepend this little bit to your GitHub URL. So I fed it the backdrop code repo, and it fired up a cloud version of Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio Code, with backdrop
Pre-configured, yeah.
Ready to be edited. I don't actually know how to get the browser to show it, but I'm sure that's a thing in there. But like so far without applying much thought to it at all, it seems to be working pretty well. So I'm impressed.
And Gitpod seems to be like one of these people that are pro open source and very supportive. Mm-hmm. So if we have a public announcement somewhere in the main site that we will be doing this sort of like code sprint, we can, like, they're very responsive with their emails. We can send them an email and say, hey, we expect a lot of developers to be onboarded on that day. So can we just send you emails and you activate their accounts? Is that an option? Or would you prefer sort of like each one of them to individually go and, which adds a little bit of, overhead for them. But if they allowed us to sort of like oversee and just send them, I don't know, 12 or 20 emails and they activate it for people, that would be great as well. But so far, the experience that I had with communicating with them has been like really great. And they also have open source certain things. And they said, hey, by the way, since you're contributing, feel free to join our organization and contribute. So like very open sourcey spirit.
It didn't actually ask me for any billing information. I just signed in with GitHub, and it seemed to give me full access. I don't know what the limits are yet. But
Exactly. You're going to hit some limits, but yeah, if you apply, like if you go to their pricing page, it says something about open source, contact us, and so on and so forth. And if you go through the process, it's pretty smooth as well.
Okay, well, let's move on. That's something we can keep in mind as we experiment for Open Source Day. What about this Drupal? You mentioned a mentor contributor summit with Drupal.
Yeah, so if any of us attends, I plan to. I would like us to be as less intrusive as possible, because the main goal of that is to train people to be Drupal mentors. What I plan to do is just silently attend any meetings or sessions that they have and get ideas, because we're all amateur mentors, and we are all thoughtful people, but there might be things or approaches that we do that are not ideal and we could improve upon. So yeah, basically I just want to attend and get ideas. Having said that, the majority of the people attending will probably end up being contributors for Drupal, whereas we would most likely not. So yeah.
Okay, this is September 17th and 18th. Is it, I assume it must be a virtual event, right?
Yes, and it's free for all.
Okay. Well, I'll have to check my schedule. I mean, if I wouldn't have any hesitation in participating. I've mentored at plenty of Drupal events and would in the future if I were there. So, although, yeah, things are changing so much in Drupal, I'm not sure how useful I'd be. But we'll see. I have to see if I can participate. But there are some folks that do really, I think, I've always been impressed at some of the experiments and things that Drupal has done in terms of mentoring contributors. So,
yep.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that?
One thing came to mind. So
sure.
Drupal South happened yesterday, which is the respective Drupal con for Australia, New Zealand, and that area, that part of the world. And we had Dries as a keynote speaker. So a a thing that I have noticed is that they are now openly sort of like admitting that the low end market, which is they sort of like spot in as D7, has taken a hit over the past years since D8 was released, and they are starting to realize that people are going to be from the community are going to be lost, and we're going to bleed towards WordPress or Wix or Squarespace. And I've seen that now in official sort of like slides and things like that presented by people and being admitted. So I don't know how we can use that towards the outreach, like for the benefit of our purposes or whatever. It seemed that even Dries implied that it's expected at least that people are going to go away, like these 7 people are going to go away. So I don't know how we can hook into that and say, hey, why leave this part of the community move away when we can retain it? And when they're ready for D8 or D9 or enterprisey things, they can just be in a familiar place.
Yeah, can we get favored child status, right? Like well, if you're leaving, instead of going to WordPress,
Yes.
why don't you go here?
Yeah, which is familiar. So this was my thought exactly. So I posted a comment while Dries was speaking, but I didn't notice that there was a time window for people to pre-submit questions. So my questions and a few others that have asked, they thanked us, but they said, sorry, we don't have time for all of these questions. And you had a chance to, pre-submit them, but we didn't. But yeah, if we can sort of like approach any person with, I don't know, some official, I don't know, Drupal association ties or whatever, and tell them, hey, look, since you're sort of like starting to admit the fact that sort of like we're losing, if not community members, installations, so sites are basically moving away from Drupal. And if you're sort of like admitting that they're going away to other software, why not suggest Backdrop as a familiar sort of like software with less pain or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I see Robert smiling. You agree, Robert? Or what?
In pre-COVID times, go ahead.
I was just to say I agree, but it's sort of asking, how are you going to admit you were wrong?
No, we're not going to go into that.
No, I mean,
but since the community has come to terms with that fact that they're bleeding out population, or I don't know, sites or whatever, that we're losing people to other software, why not officially sort of like start endorsing Backdrop as an option? Because from both Dries and others in other sessions, it was mentioned that for whatever reason, so they weren't saying that it's the cost or whatever it is. They said for whatever reason we realized that this has been happening and it's a fact, right? So if they realized it, and now they have the Drupal steward thing going on, so they're basically suggesting Drupal 7 site owners, if your site is neglected and it's old, basically convert it to a static version. But this is basically telling them, you had a CMS, the best that we can do for you is just make it static. Why not, anyways. So I'm throwing that on the table as an idea, just as a thing that I've noticed that, even higher up members, if you can say that, are admitting the fact that, people are going away.
What I was going to say is, in sort of pre-COVID times, my response to that would be to just have conversations with Drupal people at events that I'm attending, right? And that's how I would get a better sense of where people are at. I'm really kind of at a loss right now for how to deal with that sort of remotely, right? It's like, I'm not sure like who you contact, and to be honest, I'm not sure that a cold email, right, is going to get a response on that kind of an issue. Whereas having beers with some folks at DrupalCon, right, or in a local camp, we could actually have a discussion where, that might be meaningful. So I'm not saying that means we can't do it right now, but
yes,
I'm just like, what is the alternative to sort of, because I mean, being more, another solution is just being more out there, not in a provocative way, but just
Exactly.
doing more blog posts, being at more virtual events, and hopefully sort of stimulating that discussion. Because whether or not it's an official thing that comes out of the Drupal organization, I mean, it's enough to just get some individuals, right? If there are some key individuals in the Drupal community that start talking about Backdrop personally as an alternative, I mean, there already are some. So but if we just got more people talking about it, that's one way.
Yeah. So what I was thinking is that if each one of us, each time that they receive an email about an event that is happening with sessions, just go through the list of the sessions, and if there's a session that is in the form Drupal 7 is coming to end of life, now what? So this seems like an opportunity to approach the person that is doing that presentation and say, hey, if you are suggesting like alternatives, are you aware of Backdrop, and have you included it in your presentation? Would you consider doing it? Things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta imagine at some level, Dries feels the same things that we do.
Yeah.
We're the only ones that are, stewarding this like brilliant code base that he came up with, and that he was kind of forced to abandon. So I mean, he's got to have some affection to his orphan children.
Yeah.
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's also the fact that we forked he takes that personally, and so I think even though he might love the code, like there's an emotional reaction there that yeah. And I think we need to be a little careful with that, because it is. I mean, it's his baby. So
yeah, and also, as I said, the whole Stewart thing is sort of like a competitive solution, because there's some income for the Drupal Association from that backs up the security team, I think, if I read things correctly. So yeah, we need to be careful and delicate with how we approach people.
Yeah. But I mean, as these things go, like I just on another note, I randomly wandered into a CMS, a company. I sent myself the link for it, but it was comparing themselves. There was like an alternative to Drupal, and the things that they said about Drupal, like I read, I was like, oh, what are they saying? And they're saying, yeah, any competent programmer can look at the Drupal source code and instantly find security holes. And I'm like, I proved that. Come on, break into it. Let me see you do that. And there's just stuff. So and they were like, it's hard to extend. And I'm like, wait a minute. So I mean, the kind of stuff that the actual enemies throw at it is so much. It's so different. And when I was at Accenture, I used to run across clients that they were getting pitched by like Adobe and Sitecore and people like that. And like that is a way more antagonistic relationship.
Yeah, and one thing that I was always trying to point out is, if it is easy, or in the future it becomes easy to migrate from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8 and beyond, for those people that are prepared to go enterprise, or that's how people phrase it, it should be equally or relatively easy to do the same thing from Backdrop. So as I said, why force people to, or the motto that has been going around is Drupal 7 after the end of life is not going to be secure anymore, right? So there's a rush, you need to do it now. And people are then, because of that, forced to move to other software. And what I'm saying is, like, instead of forcing those people to just go away, suggest Backdrop as an alternative. You still sort of like retain them in the wider community, if people still consider us part of the community, because I do. Yes, Robert?
Yeah, but there's also big companies that are providing paid LTS support for Drupal 7.
Yeah.
I mean, they occupy, in a sense, they are kind of our closest competitors, because they're saying you can stay all Drupal 7e, and they can make similar arguments. When you're ready, you could migrate.
Well, Sorry, but I don't see them as competitors. I see them as a target audience for our outreach. Why keep
So maybe competitor is the wrong word. They are people, and agree. They are people that are potentially our audience would also consider. I mean, that's what we did before going to Backdrop, is looked at those as a possibility.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I think companies like My Drop Wizard, for example,
Yes,
exactly. are prime partner possibilities because we can provide stuff that solves their problems. And they make money just on billable hours. They actually don't want to be in the software creation business. They're in the billable hours business. So if we can provide ways to enhance their product, they're our friends.
Okay. Let's. If I to sum all of this up, I would just say we're looking for ideas. I mean, I think doing the other things we're doing and just being out there and doing outreach is the one thing. But also talk to people in the Drupal community and see where we can go with that. I don't know. Yeah.
Speaking of people like the long-term support, the businesses that are participating in that program, have we done anything to approach them? I think that someone from My Drop Wizard has appeared at some point back in the Gitter days in our community and then gone away. But have we actively tried to approach them and see what they think? I don't recall. I don't
have an answer to that, but I'm not quite sure how they're a logical target. Their whole mission is to provide, to keep people under, to support people who've chosen to stay on Drupal 7, right? And so yes. I don't see what advantage they have in working with us.
They do long-term support for Drupal 6 as well as Drupal 7.
Right.
They have hosting clients, they have services, they do everything. And last I talked to them, it was a while ago, they were very familiar with Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 code, and they were very happy to work on Backdrop code. We had some of the main people that are contributing to stuff and creating modules in our contrib repository. I think that they don't have any, even though their business model is long-term support, like they do other stuff too. And I don't think they have any reason to not want to support Backdrop. I think that it's just another tool for them, or they're like, oh, we have clients who don't want to do anything and we'll give them long-term support. And we have clients who want to upgrade but can't go to Drupal 8 and we'll give them Backdrop. And I think they're, as far as last time I talked to them, so I haven't talked to them in a while either, pre-pandemic, they had no bad feelings about Backdrop.
Sure, I know them as well, and I have no reason to believe that they dislike or don't like Backdrop. I'm just saying they also have no incentive to really, I mean, other than wherever that's to support us as a project, they may do that, right? But I don't know what the partnership is, right? They're out there saying, if you've chosen not to move off of Drupal 7, we can help you. I mean, what we could be doing is asking them, once people get to the point where they absolutely are going to move off of Backdrop, then, recommend, mention Backdrop as an option. But I mean, it's not obvious to me what the pitch would be if I were to approach them.
Well, the business
in my head,
in my head, and this is something that I told to the company that I was working for. I just said, look at the usage stats. There's literally hundreds of thousands of D7 sites out there, which are going to reach a point where they have no option. So why don't we join the long-term support program as well, which is a form of contribution which the company that I work for also supports. So their argument was we are more enterprise and these are low budget sites that are not going to move to D8 or D9 ever. So this is the bit where people long-term supporters could hook. These guys already have customers, a very big user base of customers that are in D7 or before. And the reason why they're not going to D8 is usually cost, right? If they go to them and say, hey, would you like to go to D8 and they say no because it's costly, and they say there's this other option as well, which is, I don't know, half the amount of money, maybe they say yes. You know, that's the
Sure.
whole idea.
Okay, but I don't think that's the business that My Drop Wizard is in. Isn't helping people get to the next thing. Their business is in supporting them while they're on Drupal 7, right? And
Okay.
as long as they're there. So, I mean, if I were at conferences, I would be, having conversations with them just sort of casually, but like out of the blue to like reach out to them via email, it's like, I don't know what the pitch would be, right? Like what I would be asking. So other than to keep us on their radar. So sure, as they're having informal conversations with clients, I'd love, they should be mentioning us. And my guess is they are. I mean, from what I know of the people who run that, I'm sure if they've, if they're talking with a client that I don't know that, but that would be a thing to ask them, is if they're talking to folks who literally are deciding like where to go after.
Exactly.
Are they mentioning us? Yeah, that would be a good thing.
Yeah.
So
that's where I was getting at. All right, cool.
Yeah, so sounds like, yeah. How about, well, we're out of time. So other things that we need to be talking about are our next Backdrop Live, but we'll have to save that for another week. Okay. Any final thoughts from anybody?
Not content, but feature phrases soon. Do we want to communicate things and solicit help?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that could be an agenda item in the next meeting. We can talk about it briefly now.
Yes.
I did post a note in Zulip 2 releases ago. I did a blog post saying, what issues are people prioritizing for this next release? And it's getting late for that. It's only 10 days left, but it's not necessarily too late. We could do that again.
Exactly.
It's something we can tweet about and just sort of hopefully draw some folks in that, maybe aren't in the issue queue day to day, but have worked there before. And so that if people want to do that blog post again, I actually drafted a starter version of it, but I just need some issues to put into it. If people have any other ideas, we could do a schedule, a kind of a sprint between now and the 31st. If anybody's interested in that, I'm helping. Go ahead.
I can do a 30-second coda of what could have been a longer thing at the beginning, but I feel like towards the beginning of the meetings, we should spew out deadlines and things like that for people who just happen to randomly look at that one YouTube video. Just, what if you only got one shot at somebody, what do they need to know? So we should have like a 1-minute spiel, next release is this, newsletter goes out this day, submission deadlines here. For more information, go to this URL.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea.
Yeah, and that's also a good point about the newsletter. I think we got spoiled with Peter for a few months. He was getting it out each month, and then I think we missed this month, didn't we? I don't think there was an August newsletter. So yeah, so we should get back on that. Yeah,
we're European. We take August off.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, that's a good point. Look, let's sign off so the next meeting can start.
All right.
Bye, everybody.